He caught her escaping the creek at sunset, then offered her the one thing she never expected, a home. The summer of 1987 in Harlan County, Kentucky, was the kind of summer that stuck to your skin, humid and heavy, pressing down on the hills with a heat that didn't lift even after dark. The creek that ran behind the Whitfield property stayed cold and clear, even when everything else in the county felt like it was quietly smoldering. Mae Calloway had learned to move through the world like a ghost, quietly, quickly, and without leaving much behind. At 24, she'd already mastered the art of disappearing, from foster homes in 3 different counties, from a bad situation in Bowling Green she still didn't speak about, from towns that looked at a young woman with no address and no references and decided she wasn't their problem to solve. She carried everything she owned in a canvas bag, with a broken strap she'd knotted back, together with baling twine, 2 dresses, 1 pair of boots, a dog-eared paperback she'd read 4 times, a small tin of carefully saved money, and a photograph of a woman someone had once told her was her mother, though she had no way to confirm it anymore. She slept in the old Whitfield barn on the edge of Route 9, in the dry hayloft where the roof didn't leak. She came and went through a loose board on the east wall, leaving no trace, making no sound, asking nothing from nobody. She'd found the creek by accident her 3rd week in Harlan County. Tucked behind a thick grove of white birch trees, fed by a cold mountain spring, it curved into a shallow pool that caught the late afternoon sun like a sheet of hammered gold. The first time Mae saw it, she stood at the tree line for a full minute and just looked. It was the most quietly beautiful thing she had seen in years. Every evening near sunset, she'd wade in fully clothed, the cold water rising around her knees, the golden light moving slow across the surface, the frogs beginning their low evening song in the reeds. She didn't swim. She didn't splash. She just stood there with her arms wrapped around herself and her eyes closed, breathing. And for those 20 minutes between the last light and the true dark, she felt something she couldn't name but recognized immediately. Peace. Real unconditional peace. It was the one moment in her day that belonged entirely to her. She didn't know that anyone ever watched. Cole Whitfield had no intention of being near that creek on the Tuesday evening that changed everything. He was 41, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands and the kind of quiet that came not from shyness, but from years of choosing silence over words that didn't mean enough. He'd inherited the farm from his father, run cattle through good years and lean ones, fixed fence lines and replaced rotting posts without complaint. He knew every acre of his land the way other men knew their children's faces. His neighbors called him the most decent man in the county. His late wife's family called him closed off. Cole would have said only that he was honest about what he could give and what he couldn't. He'd gone to the creek that Tuesday to check the eastern fence line after his border collie. Rex had dug under it 2 nights running. He wasn't thinking about anything beyond the fence post and the fading light. He came around the bend in the birch grove and stopped dead. A woman stood in the middle of the shallow pool, red-haired, pale-skinned, wearing a dark green dress that the water had pulled heavy against her legs. Her arms were folded across her chest, holding herself together. Her eyes, wide, brown, startled, locked directly onto his. For one long frozen second, neither of them moved. Then Mae ran. She grabbed her clothes from the bank in one motion, bare feet hitting the mud. Water sprang silver arcs behind her as she bolted into the birch trees. Cole stood with one hand on the fence post and watched her disappear without a sound. He didn't follow her. He noticed the canvas bag hidden under the flat overhang of a gray boulder at the water's edge, tucked there deliberately, the way someone hid the only things in the world that mattered to them. Cole looked at it for a long moment, then walked home without touching it. He made coffee that night and didn't drink it. He sat at the kitchen table and looked at the window and listened to Rex sleep by the back door. The farmhouse was quiet in the way it had been quiet for 4 years, full of the echo of someone no longer there, every room still shaped around an absence. He thought about the woman in the creek, the practiced, hair-trigger alertness in her eyes before the fear, the look of someone who had learned long ago that unexpected men meant danger. He'd seen that look before, on rescue animals, on people whose trust had been broken so many times they'd stopped keeping count. It stayed with him all night. The next morning he drove to Patty, Reardon's diner on Main Street, the closest thing Harlan County had to a living newspaper. He described the woman and asked if anyone knew her. Patty set down the coffee pot and looked at him carefully. "That'd be the Calloway girl," she said. "Been in town about 3 weeks. Asked at the hardware store, the feed supply here. Looking for any kind of work. Cleaning, cooking, bookkeeping, anything. Nobody's hired her. No local address, no references anyone can call. People around here don't extend trust to someone they can't place." "She sleeping rough?" Cole asked. Patty held his gaze. "I expect so, though nobody's asked her directly." Cole drove home slowly with both hands on the wheel. He thought about his farmhouse. 5 bedrooms, 1 occupied. The unused room at the end of the hall that smelled like cedar and old quilts. With a window that faced the south, field and caught the morning light, soft and yellow. He thought about the harvest 6 weeks out, and no farmhand to help since Davis left for Lexington in June. The books were behind. The barn door hinge had been broken since March. He thought about a woman wading alone in a creek at sunset because it was the only peace she could find in her entire day. That evening, Cole went back to the creek. The canvas bag was still under the boulder. He sat on top of the gray rock and waited. The sun moved down through the birch leaves, turning everything amber and rose. He heard footsteps at 7:20. Mae stopped 10 feet away, jaw set, eyes measuring the distance between them with the fast, automatic calculation of someone who always knew where the exits were. She wore a yellow dress faded at the hem. Her red hair was down and slightly damp. "I wasn't stealing," she said immediately. "I know," he said. "This isn't—" "It is my property, actually," Cole said calmly. "But I'm not here about that." She waited. "I have a spare bedroom with a lock on the door," he said. "Harvest is coming in 6 weeks and I'm short-handed. I need someone for bookkeeping, meals, and general upkeep. $30 a week plus room and board." He picked up her canvas bag and held it out. Honest work. Nothing else attached. Mae stared at him. She'd been offered things by men before. None of it had ever been this simple. "Men don't offer things for nothing," she said. "I told you exactly what I need," Cole said. "Bookkeeping and harvest help isn't nothing." "What if I'm not good at it?" "Are you?" A pause. "No, I mean, yes, I am." "Then we don't have a problem." She didn't take the bag, but she sat down in the grass, a few feet away, and pulled her knees up and looked at the water. The creek ran between them, soft and indifferent. "I'll think about it," she said. Cole set the bag on the rock and nodded. "Fair enough." She came the next morning with 2 conditions, delivered at the kitchen door in the steady tone of a woman who had learned that unstated terms were terms that got broken. A lock on her bedroom door, the right to leave any time without explanation. Cole agreed to both without hesitation, showed her the room, and went out to start the morning chores. Mae stood alone in the bedroom, turning the small brass key over in her fingers, looking at the patchwork quilt and the wooden dresser in the window facing the cornfield moving slow in the morning breeze. That night she sat on the edge of the mattress in the dark and cried, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming shock of having 4 walls around her that were, at least for now, hers. She hadn't felt that since she was 6 years old. She worked hard. No one in the world could take that from her. Within 3 days, the household books were reorganized, 2 months of backlogged receipts sorted, and the ledger balanced in a clear hand that made Cole look at it quietly for a long time before saying, "I've been losing $50 a month on feed costs I didn't know about." She cooked breakfast before sunrise and had dinner ready when Cole came in. From the fields, she learned the name of every animal on the property and memorized which gates needed lifting before they'd close properly. On a Wednesday afternoon, she repaired the broken barn door hinge using tools she found on the workbench, drawing on years of making do. Cole came home, walked to the barn, stood in the doorway looking at the fixed hinge, and went inside without a word. But at dinner he said, "Thank you for the barn door. It was bothering me," Mae said. "Me too," he said. "For about 7 months." Something close to a smile crossed her face. Quick, barely there, but real. They didn't talk much in those early weeks, but they ate at the same table every evening, and there was something in that repeated simple act. Two people in the same lamplight, passing the salt, listening to the same rain on the same roof, that worked on both of them in quiet, underground ways. The truth came out on a rainy Thursday evening in late September. Mae was reorganizing the hall closet when a box slid from the top shelf and the lid came half off, and the photographs spilled out across her hands. A dark-haired woman laughing in a cornfield. The same woman on the porch steps with a coffee cup, looking at the camera with calm, settled eyes. A wedding photograph. Cole younger, less worn, standing beside a woman in a simple white dress, both of them looking at each other instead of the camera. And at the bottom, a hospital room photograph. The woman thinner now, paler, but still with those same steady eyes, still managing a real smile. Mae was carefully sliding everything back. When she became aware that Cole was standing in the hallway, she waited for him to be angry. He wasn't. He just looked the way a man looks, who has been carrying something heavy for so long. He's forgotten what it felt like not to. Her name was Diane, he said quietly. Married 11 years. She died 4 years ago in April. Cancer. Started in her lungs, moved fast. He looked at the box in Mae's hands. I kept the farm because she loved it here. Said the light in the evenings was different from anywhere else she'd seen. He paused. Some days I think she was right. Other days the whole place just feels like a very large, very quiet room to be alone in. Mae placed the box gently back on the shelf. I know something about that, she said. Not as sympathy, as fact. He looked at her then, really looked, and Mae, who had spent years flinching from being seen, found that she didn't move away. She told him her own story that evening. They sat at the kitchen table, after dinner with the rain loud on the roof and the lamp burning low, and she told him piece by piece in the foster homes, the caseworker who never remembered her name, the 3 towns she'd fled. She told him about Bowling Green and Plain, flat sentences, watching his face the whole time. He didn't look shocked. He didn't look uncomfortable. He just listened, fully, without filling the silences with reassurances she hadn't asked for. When she finished, the kitchen was dark beyond the lamp. You never had to explain yourself to earn your place here, Cole said. I want you to know that. Mae looked at her hands around her coffee cup. I've never stayed anywhere long enough for it to matter, she said. Maybe, Cole said carefully. You just never had a reason that asked nothing back. She didn't answer, but she didn't go to bed for another hour, and neither did he. And they sat in the easy quiet of the kitchen, while the last of the rain moved off across the ridge. She stayed through harvest, the farm coming in better that year than the 3 before it combined. She stayed through the first frost, waking at 5 in the morning to find the fields gone silver white in the dark, standing at the kitchen window with her coffee and feeling, for the first time, like she was watching something that was partly hers. She stayed through Thanksgiving, when Cole's sister Ellen drove up from Lexington and filled the house with noise and warmth. Before dinner, Ellen found Mae alone in the hallway and touched her arm lightly. I'm glad you're here, she said. I mean that genuinely. Mae had no ready answer. She just nodded, but she held those words for the rest of the evening, like something she was afraid to put down. On the last evening of November, Mae went back to the creek. The water was cold now, the pool dark and slow under a steel-gray sky. The birch trees had lost their leaves and stood white and bare against the fading light. She didn't wade in. She just stood at the edge with her boots in the dead grass and looked at the water that had started everything. She heard footsteps behind her and didn't flinch, didn't calculate the distance to the tree line, just waited. Cole came and stood beside her with his hands in his jacket pockets, his breath making small clouds in the cold air. You thinking about leaving? He asked. Honest, the way he asked everything. Mae looked at the dark water, at the bare white trees, at the last pale light above the ridge. No, she said quietly. I'm thinking about what it feels like to stop, running and just stand somewhere. How does it feel? He asked. She was quiet for a moment. Like something I want to keep, she said. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't say anything more. He just stood beside her in the last light of November, two people who had each survived their own long silence, finally standing together at the edge of the same cold water, beginning something that felt, for the first time in both their lives, exactly like home.